attendees on the bridge. I just want to make sure you saw them all for a second. Scan down. There's people coming in the next few days. We have actually a huge jam of people coming on October the 3rd, Friday, October the 3rd. That's the day before General Conference begins. Just out of curiosity, let me ask you, how many of you will be in Provo and available to come to a corporate meeting on Friday, October 3rd? How many of you will be long gone doing other things? Okay, so it's okay if we schedule meetings on that day. You'll be around, you don't care. It's Credit Suisse, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, San Francisco, quite a few. Make sure you keep up with these. Interview question of the day. Does anyone want to, this is the prize for the winner. BYU Leather Portfolio. Anyone willing to try? Volunteer. Come on down. Actually, today, for the first time, we have a prize also for second place. Yes. The question is, what would you do if you were asking an interview, how would you differentiate yourself from other students? Yep, other students. Could be BYU or just students generally.
I would definitely say that I'm willing to put in the work that it takes to get things done, especially as it regards to school. I'm not the kind of student that just tries to get a grade. I feel like I'm a student who tries to learn from each class to figure out what it is that I'm supposed to take away from that class that's helped me as a person. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that sets me apart from other students is my desire to learn and the fact that I don't worry about just getting a grade. And I am Brett Peterson.
My name's Nate. One thing that is a distinguishing characteristic about myself is that I'm usually not satisfied with the confines that are set around me. One example of that is this past summer I was actually hired as a food and beverage intern, but I was able to go up and talk to the director of accountancy and extend my internship to work with the accounting department and get paid for it as well. And so just the asset that I have is just my curiosity, trying to expand and not being satisfied enough. I'm willing to say I don't know and go look for above and beyond for additional opportunities. That's today as well.
Okay, so I'll hold my hand over the head. So how many of you, let's see, how do we vote? Heads down? You guys, okay, all in favor of Nate? All in favor of Brett? We're pretty close to Brett. Who's who? You want to vote again? Too late. Yeah. Thank you very much. And go ahead. How many of you know the company called Impro? Okay. Maybe a little bit. Let me just indicate they have beautiful offices looking out over the Pacific Ocean in Newport Beach, California. Yeah, the workers are all got Ferraris and Porsches and stuff like that. One of the big money management firms in the world. And we got an interesting plug from them this past week. One of our students is interviewing former students who's coming from another job, interviewing with those guys. One of the senior people said, this is a quote, he thinks BYU undergraduate business program is the best in the country. This is a guy who's not LDS, doesn't know, he's not interested in religion at all. He's talking about quality of students. I think it's just one little drop. It's not the ocean, it's one little drop, but it's nice to hear. But we have a comment that we'd like from our TAs. So, no, actually, yeah.
So this week I helped a lot on resumes, so I went and worked a ton of hours earlier this week. So to accommodate to the BYU 20 hours, tomorrow my office hours are changing as well as Friday. I'm working from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. tomorrow and Friday. I understand that some of you still need your resumes reviewed. please come during that time, and I can help you out with that. Also, I understand that you keep on sending emails and I keep on hearing that I'm not responding back to you. So I'll work on that. Thanks.
Okay, one thing I'd like to add too, I was talking with the TAs, some of you have been actually kind of abusive to them. So I'd like you to be appreciative. They'll be very professional, and you'll be professional as well. Some people have shown up at homes, apartments and homes, and others about 12 o'clock. It seems a little extreme, but they're probably going into investment banking, so then I'll say that's why they're being. So just be dealing with students that are limited to how many hours they can work a week, so just put yourself in the same position. They're doing the best that they can. Let's see. One of the things that we want to talk about, so let me jump in a little bit, is dressing appropriately. And one of the things that I do on the New York trip that we'll take is I want to see for every student who goes on that trip what they're planning to bring with them for clothing. So that I know that you dress appropriately. One of the clubs will check you out, one of the club presidents, because it's really important that you dress properly. And by properly, I mean in a business environment where you look sharp and no one actually notices that much what you're wearing, because you're focused on your face, what you're saying, and focused on your personality, and not on your flat, garish clothing or very conservative clothing. You're just sort of indifferent to that. So what we want to do is show you a couple pictures. And this is business casual. Is there anything, anybody says business casual, is there anything in this picture that you think is too casual for business casual? Okay, the way I would look at it is jeans are not business casual unless they're extraordinarily expensive jeans. And I don't imagine you guys will be buying those. But generally this looks okay. One of the reasons I'm actually kind of nervous about business casual is you can really change your image in people's eyes by dressing poorly on a casual day. On a business day, you look really sharp. So be careful. I know dress codes are very different on the East Coast and West Coast. My son that works with Facebook, he can wear almost anything he wants. You know, ripped t-shirt, jeans, whatever, no one notices. In other environments, it makes a huge difference. And it would if you wear a suit and tie, you look the way out there. Okay, how about this? Casual, this is the scorecard on how to do it. Casual, let's say you're going on a golf outing. Bill, can you stand up just for a second? What do you think of Bill as golf casual? Looks good. How about jeans? No jeans. Actually, you get on most golf courses wearing jeans. What about cargo pants? So this is essentially golfing attire for most of the stuff you're going to be doing. If you're doing it with senior people, if you're doing it with clients, that's a good way to approach it. And notice up on the screen, we're looking at this guys that we want to say no to. No collar, sleeveless shirt, jogging shorts. This is a way to kind of look just weird. So don't look weird. Yeah, the problem is people who wear the stuff on the right-hand side, they think they look cool looking with those things. So be a friend. Help them wake up if they're doing that stuff. Okay, business casual. This is women's clothes, so we continue to be here, but what do you think about this? Is this the way you guys are dressed? Any comments? It should be pretty straightforward. Business professional. And one thing, please.
Sorry, this might seem like a silly question, but your business casual, what if you don't like to wear slacks and you still wear a skirt?
I think you can definitely. No problem at all. But one thing about this business professional that I've warned you about, this may be a personal preference of mine. Sometimes students show up looking like they're an undertaker or mortuary workers. You don't have to be that colorless or black suit, black tie, white shirt. It's kind of scary. But wearing a nice, I keep a really nice tie to wear for interviews and important things. It doesn't have any stains or dark marks from reading the newspaper. Anything on here you have questions with? Joe, please.
The other thing I'd add is it's suits can be really expensive, so the place to not skimp is shirt and tie. Spend the most you can on your shirt and tie. That's what people really do.
And my personal preference is that shine shoes, dark shoes will look really good. So for example, on the New York trip, we're staying in Marriott Courtyard across from the Service private equity firm, their headquarters. Down in the basement is the shoe shine place. Everywhere I go on business travel, I always check ahead to see where I can find the shoe shine place. In Salt Lake Airport, in the Delta Terminal, there's a couple of shoe shine guys. I think it really makes you look very different if the clothes look great. Tina, come on down. Cocktail attire. Now, for me, cocktail attire would not change at all. I would be in a suit. I would be in a suit for business professional. I'd be in a suit for cocktail attire. However, Tina would have had a special outfit. So, Tina, what are the rules for women?
Okay, well, here we have kind of a snazzy silver dress, but typically, kind of you hear about the little black dress. It's typically what women will do for these cocktail parties. You want to wear some nice jewelry, but you don't want anything too ostentatious. We've already covered the other ones, right? Okay, so most of the women are not here because they're at a Women in Business Club meeting. But for the few that are here, let me just say, so this is sort of our fashion show. So this is business travel for women. And we talked about business travel for men. And so for women, a lot of it is we sit there and we try to figure out jewelry. We try to figure out sort of, just like you probably struggle over the right tie. So it's just picking something that makes you feel like you are presenting yourself as a professional. And you don't want to wear anything that is distracting, and clearly you don't want to wear anything immodest. So, are there any questions about appropriate dress in all the different settings? Yes?
Sorry, another question. How tall are heels usually? So like, I guess, cocktail or business professional?
Right. 2 to 3 inches. Any other questions about men's dress or women's dress? Okay. It's how you present yourself. It's the first thing that they see. So definitely want to just put your best foot forward in how you dress. Gives them a signal that you know what you're about.
You know, just to give you an example, when my family and I first moved to Tokyo, we were invited to a Friday and Saturday night party. And a senior person at Credit Suisse, which is one of our competitors in Tokyo, we asked them what kind of clothing we should wear. We're just new in town, so they said casual. I said, is that like polo shirts and Bermuda shorts? They said, yeah, that sounds good, casual. So that's what we wore, those kind of casual clothes. We walked up to their house, looked over, as we did, we could look over the fence. The guys wearing jackets and suit and ties, and I'm thinking, maybe we went to the wrong house. So we went back, called them on the phone, and said, just want to confirm where you live. It's in Japan, that can be kind of confusing to find homes. And they said, they gave us the address, and they said, we had to double check again, what's the address? And they said, casual. So I went there with a polo shirt, Bermuda shorts. Turned out they really was wearing jackets, bow ties, very colorful. That was their idea of casual, was really colorful, ties, jackets. So we looked only out of place for 2 or 3 hours. And we felt embarrassed for 2 or 3 hours. One of the guys from who later was knighted in the British Realm came up and said, they caught us last year too. So I learned to ask very carefully, what exactly are you going to wear? Because you can feel pretty awkward. So with that, we'll turn the time over to Bill, and Michael, please come on down.
Here's a little bit about me, and I just want to spend a couple minutes just sharing some thoughts on what you're going to be facing out in the workplace. Obviously, these aren't going to be really that new to you, but what might be new is how you think about and how you respond. And as we're a school of faith, we probably have a little different approach than anyone else out there. So, as you know, there's greater diversity than ever. Coworkers' values, behaviors are different, acceptable business practices, at-work practices, and then a lot of things are becoming legal. And so, just as some examples to sort of spur your thinking and give you some tangible examples. when you go into the workplace, you may be working with someone of the opposite gender in a shared workspace, closed door meetings, dinners, traveling alone with them, working at a personal home. On the lifestyle diversity, this would be the same sort of thing, but someone who lives a different lifestyle where you're a coworker, you're sharing the same workspace, etc. It could also be a situation where the company has a very certain stance or education for the community. What sort of support do they provide for the community? Do they market to those communities? And those may be at odds with your own personal beliefs. And then probably more typical is what do you do if you're asked to buy coffee for the team, buy alcohol for the team, you attend happy hour, social events where there's alcohol, you attend events or places where there's alcohol or other types of things. And I'm sure you have a number of other examples. I don't know if anyone quickly has one that you've encountered as you've been at your internships or different places that you felt like has made you think a little bit or made you wonder about how to do that. So I think what we hear is that students have expressed challenges or expressed worries about how to deal with this. We also hear from recruiters about how will our students perform in these sort of situations. And as you think about it, there's probably not a really good, simple approach to every situation. And one of the reasons, or a couple of the reasons, would be that students really have different capabilities and concerns. So each of you are going to have different weaknesses, or you're going to feel more comfortable in different situations, and so it's not really a one-size-fits-all. Also, there's a lot of different advice you can seek, both secular, both from expert within the church about what do you do. There will be, you'll probably hear from bishops or stake presidents that you should absolutely always be this way in a certain work environment. You'll hear from someone else something that's different. So I don't know if there's a real good single answer, but what can be useful is to think about a framework where, as you think about different situations, what might you do? And as you think through these different situations, what could you do? One of them is you just escape. So here's a situation that you feel is very personally threatening, and that if you don't do something, you're going to be compromised, or you may capitulate to do something that you don't want to. In those situations, you want to run. There's other situations that aren't going to be personally threatening. You may have some reservations about really engaging in the event or continuing to work with somebody, but you're just going to observe it. You're going to watch it a little bit. And then a third option, though, is where, again, it's not personally threatening. But as you're involved in these situations, you have an opportunity to really show some strength, to be an example. And being involved, you don't feel like it's going to send any sort of signal of endorsement. So you're not saying, I agree with this. And so as you think across a spectrum of things that you can do, here are those options again. Escape, examine, engage. And I think it's important, though, as you think through the three options, there is going to be a different impact, and I would suggest there's also a level of difficulty that will vary depending on what option you take. So I would suggest that if you're over on the left-hand side, if you escape, that's going to have a much more of a narrow impact, probably just you, and it's likely going to just be negative. So if all of a sudden you don't show up at happy hour, it may be something that you really need to do because you're uncomfortable in that situation. But you may have coworkers who think that's a little strange. And then if you're on the right, it's going to be a broader impact as people are going to see you, you're going to be more visible, and it'll likely be more positive overall. However, there's also the difficulty scale. It's a lot easier, or I think there'll be lower difficulty on the left-hand side, and as you move right, it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder. If you're in a situation, you're surrounded by people who are doing things that you're uncomfortable with, that's a challenge, but the more you can do that, I think the broader your impact can be. And so let me just finish with the final thought that I feel like probably my most meaningful missionary experiences where I felt like people saw my values in action was when I was engaged in situations that you may have thought were uncomfortable or hard to deal with, and yet when you're in there and you're still representative of your values and you're not compromising them in any way, people really notice that. And many people who you wouldn't think are even really watching you see what you're doing and they're inspired. I've had more people come up to me after events and say, I was surprised to see you there, but I saw how you handled yourself, and what is this about your faith, and what's your religion and things? So it's really an opportunity for you to share.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to be with you. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm one of the Associate Deans of the Marriott School. And I'd say that the most enjoyable dimension of my role as an Associate Dean is working with the student leaders. I have great appreciation and respect for our students, for you, and for the group of students that I work with every year who are on our student council and officers and many of our clubs and student associations. You know, we have, those of us who have been in the Marriott School and at BYU for quite a while, I think can fairly easily forget how encapsulated we are in this very, very unusual environment. It is an amazing place. There aren't many places that are anything like it in the world. Our sister campuses, of course, share a very, very similar kind of culture. We have church affiliation and sponsorship that pulls us together, and that's a great thing to have in common. But there aren't many places like this on the earth. We can sometimes, those of us who stay here, as the students pass through, as you pass through, can kind of forget that. Let me give you an example. It reminds me of some of the things that Bill alluded to. I had a couple wonderful male students, men students, come to me a couple of years ago, and they said, we both work in the same office in the Tanner building. One of us works in the morning, one of us works in the afternoon. And we're both married. We are paired up with women students. Each one of us is a woman student in our shifts, and we work in really close proximity. And we're uncomfortable. We've talked to our wives about this, and they're kind of uncomfortable. And anyway, they've talked to a couple of people, and I think people just referred them to me. And I sat there and listened to their concerns, and my immediate concern was, well, guys, welcome to the 21st century. I mean, you need to deal with this. And then I went down and I looked at the space, and I saw that, well, they really were in very close proximity. And the place was sort of kind of a concealed area. It had large partitions. And it turned out, after I talked to a couple of people who were affiliated with the office, there were some things we could do. We could open up the space, we could lower the partitions, and create a larger work area. And that turned out to be the solution. But the thing that stayed on my mind is that, how many organizations could you go to in that sort of a situation and say, I'm uncomfortable with this. Can you fix this problem for me? And how would the other person feel? There were just all kinds of interesting questions that came to my mind. I don't think you can assume that an organization would appreciate the concern. And so you then have the task of, or the issue of, well, how do you manage that kind of a situation? And how do you manage it in such a way that the other person, male or female, doesn't feel like he or she has leprosy, right? So there are some real challenges and sensitivities. The first research project I worked on as a doctoral student with a very outstanding social scientist was a study of the impact of romantic relationships at work, the impact on an organization. It was a fascinating project, and I interviewed a lot of people. And I interviewed a lot of people who had either been involved in or who had closely sort of observed and been affected by romantic relationships at work. And the way, some of these were affairs, and some of them were not. Some of them were just people meeting each other, being attracted to each other, falling in love. But in many cases, the relationships, the romantic relationship, had a lot of impact on the organization, on how decisions were made, on who had power, who had influence, the flow of information. And a lot of the affairs began in business travel. That was interesting, and that was very much on my mind as I interviewed these people. And I remember an experience in a few years later in my life when I was doing a project for a global telecommunications company. And they talked about an event that they referred to on the executive team of this company as the San Francisco Night. The San Francisco Night. There was a fire in a hotel, a very, very large hotel in San Francisco. And this company had kind of a contractual arrangement, a special rate with this hotel. And a lot of employees, as they traveled and as they came to the Bay Area, would stay in this hotel. One night, this fire broke out very quickly, large fire. It was the real deal. People had to evacuate the building. And as people poured out of that building in the middle of the night, in various levels and amounts of dress, it became very clear to a lot of the employees of the company that there were people together who weren't married to each other, right? And I tell that story because the CEO of the company, who was a devout Christian, was haunted by that experience. And he said, wow, what are we doing to our people with this immense amount of travel and the intense schedules and so forth? We're sort of pushing against people's marriages. We're kind of a down factor in family life. And they talked about that very seriously as leaders in the organization. Well, I share that with you because that was many years ago. And the world has changed, right? The world has changed, and the environment is even more challenging now than it was then. And so you go from this very unusual, encapsulated environment where there's lots of institutional support for the way you want to live your life, to places that may not even comprehend exactly how you want to live your life or what you're doing. Though there are a lot of people that will understand and will stand with you in it. Well, let's just think together for a few minutes about some of these things that Bill has shared with us. Certainly the issue of men and women working together is an obvious challenge, and how you're going to manage those things. And how you're going to do it in a way that's going to help everybody feel comfortable, respectful, relaxed, but respectful of the things that you hold dearest in your life. I think it's important for us to begin talking about another part of the social surround that we live in across the world, that you will live in and work in. If we had, and I didn't bother, I'm not going to bother to put up the slides, but if I showed you a list of the logos of the companies that are represented by our recruiters who come here week in and week out, and are very, very eager to get access to people like you. If I showed you that huge list of logos, I think you could pick out a few companies that you long someday to work for. Well, it's an interesting thing to get on the websites of these companies, and this is one of the things, of course, that you should do. You know, you do your homework, right? And you study these companies, and you try to get a better sense of what they're about, how they operate, how they go to market, what their value proposition is, what kind of people they're looking for, and to talk to people who work for the organization. What's it like to be an associate in this firm? You don't have to go very deep in very many of these websites to get on like a diversity tab on the website and to see what they have to say about diversity and inclusion issues. Most of these companies, with very, very few exceptions, have a lot of things to say about their commitment to inclusiveness and diversity. And that includes the LGBT community. And there are, of course, there are C-level officers in many of these firms that are a part of the LGBT community. And while some of the organizations, I think, are just kind of checking a box, they're sort of going with the flow of political and social momentum. There are a lot of people in these organizations, leaders, C-level people, and other associates at all levels that are passionately committed to these things that they're talking about. And so, what does that mean for you? I don't claim to know. I think we're just beginning now to open up in the Marriott School our own kind of internal dialogue about how we can help our students be prepared, to be comfortable, to be reasonably confident in facing some of the challenges and opportunities that they're going to face in a contemporary workplace. I can give you just a couple examples. Recently, I talked to a student who in an interview was asked if he would be, if it's a male student, if he would be uncomfortable traveling with a gay coworker. You know, would you have any problem with that? And I think the person who interviewed him was very concerned about, oh, this is a BYU student, this is a Mormon student, the person interviewing him was not LDS, but wanted to know, right at the beginning, from the beginning, do you have any discomfort with that? And I think the recruiter felt, the interviewer felt, if there's any discomfort with that, this person would not be a viable candidate for this position in our organization. Well, just think to yourselves, what's your response to that? How do you feel about that? I heard about a BYU graduate who worked for one of these global companies, whose logo I could put up here, a very well-known firm. He had done an internship with the company and then had been offered a position, took the position, and had been with them, I don't know how long, but I think it was less than a year. And at one point, this person, this BYU graduate, wrote an email to his manager, and I believe he copied his skip-level manager, his manager's manager, and said essentially this in an email message. I love this company. It's a great company, and the people I work with are terrific. But he said, I've got to say, and I think he added something like, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying it, I'm really uncomfortable with the way the LGBT stuff, as he said, is sort of being pushed on me in this organization. Now let me ask you this question. What do you think happened? What do you think the upshot of the fallout of that email was? What do you guess? Yeah, in fact, in less than 24 hours, he was gone. He was fired. Now, I share that story not to make a point that this person was a hero for doing what he did, or he was an idiot for doing what he did. No, I'm saying that he was very naive. He was very naive. not only in probably underestimating how deeply held some of this stuff was, so these values by people that surrounded you, but also how you would go about having a discussion about deeply held feelings and values and commitments. Probably not a topic for email, right? And probably not something you talk about, you discuss with someone with whom you have not yet built a relationship of deep trust and respect. That is the thing that disturbed me about that experience as it was described to me. I don't think that much good can come from that kind of an approach or a reaction. Well, you are the generation that's going to be dealing with these kinds of issues much, much more than people who are even 10 years, even, I would say, 5 years younger than you are. Now, let's see, how are you doing for time? Let me check. Okay. Let me, if I may, ask you, and I don't have a roaming mic to hand you. May I ask you, because I'll tell you what we're trying to do, and we are exploring, we really are. As faculty and staff in the Marriott School community, we seem to agree that our silence is not especially helpful, and that we feel we need to start having some dialogue with our students about such issues as these. We feel committed that, and we have not yet prepared materials. We're going to begin to work on that, and that kind of thing will include what do the living prophets of our church have to say about this. To the extent that they have talked about it, what do they have to say? We'll make sure that we have that as our baseline. Okay? A lot of people say, well, I know what brothers say, and they say so we'll include that. But we feel that we also need to provide some questions, maybe scenarios. We probably have more questions than we do answers. Because our goal is not to tell you what to do, because we can't. But our goal is, and I think Bill's model is a very helpful starting point. Our goal is to help you engage effectively, to be a representative of your deeply held convictions and faith and beliefs, and at the same time, we want you to be as effective professional as you can possibly be, and have the greatest amount of positive influence on the greatest number of people. Can I ask you then if we can kind of create, and I wish I could talk to you one-on-one and tap into your experiences and your observations and your feelings. And I realize that some of this comes very close to home for many of us. Affects our loved ones and people we hold dear. What are you observing? Some of you had internships recently. You've had various jobs in organizations in different parts of the country and elsewhere. On these kinds of social issues that we discussed, do you have any observations that might help us as we begin to think about these things? Thank you. Please, anyone, let's relax and share some things. Right here, please. You're fine.
Just on some of those topics, I guess what I think some or most of us have been able to gather is that a lot of these types of communities and social situations, it's a political correctness that needs to be stated in the workplace. Obviously, that person was let go because his sensitivity to those groups and the groups of people it's not adept for that situation. And it almost seems like, people call each other, oh, you're racist, or you're this way, or you're that way. And it's almost kind of a reverse effect, because in reality, we're the ones being pressured, to act a certain way, even though they're telling us that we're pressuring them to act a certain way, even though we do nothing to elicit those types of feelings in people, because they know our religious beliefs, they know what we personally believe, but it's not like we're preaching it to them, telling them that they're doing something. So I feel like some of it's going to be counter attack on trying to build religious. Be ourselves, but you know, if we're not out openly supporting an officer, we must be against it, and that's kind of the attitude I get from most of
Thank you for those thoughts. Appreciate that. Other observations, please. By the way, let me just add that one of the things that this BYU graduate was told was that his criticism expressed in the email was taken as I have to paraphrase it, but contributing to a hostile work environment for protected community of people. This is interesting. That may surprise some of you. But I think that the issue of having an understanding of how criticism would be experienced by other people is an important part of what we need to understand, kind of as a beginning point. Please. Go ahead.
I think a lot of the time we think that if we just stay in Utah, we're okay. I interned in Salt Lake City, and I had a couple of the bosses that I worked under ask me questions of what I thought about LGBT, alcohol, and things like that. A lot of my bosses or coworkers or even fellow interns, they're always drinking, always inviting me to go. And the thing is, we have to realize that a lot of it is just here in Provo where it's sheltered. The thing that really helped me was you have to respect them, but at the same time, you need to be careful what you say about your opinion, because your opinion about something can really hurt someone and can be turned against you. So a lot of it is for instance, when my boss asked me what I thought, I said, you know what, it might not be my belief, but am I going to be against it? Am I going to go out and say what you're doing is wrong? No, it's not. Am I going to practice it? No, not as well. I'm not going to do that. Yeah. And by that, they accepted that and they respected my opinion, because I told them just because I don't practice it doesn't mean I'm not going to allow someone to do it as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Other thoughts, please.
Just in that same vein, making children aware of the how we haven't been persecuted as a faith on the level we used to be in hundreds of years. When I grew up in the USIS, I went to a public school of 5,000 students and including Mormons. And in that environment, especially at that time period when they're actually declaring a crusade against Mormons, they report all this, you end up on the opposite side where you have a lot of people looking at you, and they may or may not realize at the time that it's aggressive. They may not realize it's offensive, but when you already broke the law, and some of these communities are very wrong, they're very sensitive. But very, very small things suddenly just get way out of proportion. And so a lot of us haven't had that experience of being on the other side. So a lot of times, if you can do what I believe Mr. Grouse recommended, was just be very, very PC about how you say it and not judgmental. I go one step ahead usually. I actively don't engage on these topics. Like if they ask me about something, I just really don't feel like that's a relevant topic of conversation. And I just try to, and I do it more friendly than that, but just try to avoid that. You know it's going to be a line, but don't walk out of the line. It's not right.
Thank you. Thank you. Please.
It's my opinion, my belief that we cannot influence the world if we are not engaged in the world, if we do not have those friendships with other people. Just like you had mentioned before, that when you build those relationships and those friendships and that trust with other people, and at that point, if they start to ask questions out of genuine curiosity, sure, go ahead and share your views as your opinion and your beliefs, and that's what makes you who you are. But if they're trying to ask questions and you can tell that they're trying to come at you and trying to get you to say the wrong thing, then yes, you can come out and say, I have my beliefs, you have your beliefs, and I think we should just leave it at that and keep the friendship and the business relationship that we have.
Thank you. One other question that I'd like to ask you, or the thing I'd like you to be thinking about is, as you think about us who are working to prepare perhaps some materials that might be helpful to you and to other students, are there any suggestions you have for us? Is there anything you'd recommend? What kinds of things might you and other students benefit from? We'd appreciate your thinking about that. If you've got thoughts today or at some other point, I certainly appreciate hearing from you. Anything else, please, that you'd like to share, please?
I think a lot of times we can cross lines or come off offensive as we aren't totally sure and aren't as strong in our own beliefs and our own doctrine and beliefs as we ought to be. I think that a lot of times when we come off as offensive or not PC or anything, it's because we aren't totally sure and don't have a totally solid hold on what exactly it is we believe and how we feel about these different issues. And I think that all of us can benefit from spending a lot of time and studying what we really believe, studying what the prophets say, and I think in this environment we can say that we can pray about it, we can study about it, and strengthen our own testimonies. And as our own beliefs become stronger, we can. I find it's less difficult to be condescending or anything like that.
Very good. Thank you. Sorry.
I think one of the biggest things as well is to learn how to articulate your beliefs. I think that would be something that would be really good to put into the curriculum, as well as different ways to interpret and react to different situations that you're placed in. Is this person asking you about your beliefs aggressively? Are they curious, as somebody else mentioned? Different ways to interact with people and articulate your beliefs would be really important too.
Very good. Thank you. Other thoughts? I found personally that for the last quite a few months, these issues have been very much on my mind. And I've had a lot of conversations with colleagues in the Mariette School who share those feelings, who share those concerns. And it's a concern for our students and knowing how much influence they have, how much you have now and will have. There are great opportunities out there to be of influence. And I think this is a time when we are going to be highlighted and distinguished in even more dramatic ways than we have been in the past. And though sometimes I can lose a little sleep over thinking about that, I can also get excited to realize what we can do. We had a wonderful talk last year. Some of the brethren visited us as department chairs and deans. And one of the brethren told us, he said, I meet every week with the First Presidency and most of the Quorum of the 12. And he said, I have seen them wrestle with incredibly challenging issues and counsel together and pray over the work of the church across the earth. But he said this, he said, I have never seen fear on the faces of these prophets. I felt wonderful when I heard that. And I felt the same way. And I love the words of the Apostle Paul, that the Lord has not given us the spirit of fear, Don't be afraid. Don't be flippant. Don't be cocky. But don't be afraid. You're going to pray your way through the experiences here in the Marian School. And you're going to pray your way through the stages of your life going forward. And you're going to do remarkable things if you continue to do that. We trust you. We're doing our best. Everybody that's on this team in the Marian School, we're doing our best to help you have the best experience that you can have. I want to congratulate you for being in this program, for being a part of this, for being at this incredible university. Whether or not you are members, you are a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I believe it's no coincidence that you are here and that there are divine designs and plans for you in your life. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate your candor, your honesty, and your concern. I, again, want to say, we're just beginning to explore these issues, and we welcome your thoughts. If you continue to think about this, we welcome your ideas, your experiences, and suggestions. I don't know what else you folks. Jim, I'll turn it back to you.
And one of the things that was asked was making sure we understand what the doctrine of the church is. So this is from the church's website, and would like to just recommend that you take some time. Elder Oaks, Elder Christopherson, various people who have members of the family who are involved, and Elder Cook is involved. And as most of you already know, these kind of relationships and situations are very common in many households. I have 5 brothers. Well, very much one of them is getting married. So it's just in the middle of everybody's family in one way or the other. And we all love one another and have common humanity, and that's a great place to start. And I encourage you to take a look at this as you think about how you should respond, because being judgmental is probably at the bottom of the list of things we need to be. That's what my conviction. So, actually, if you join me for a moment in appreciation for Michael's presentation. And then Tina has just a few wrap-up items and then closing remarks.
Just on this topic, I met last week with a senior director from Walmart, and I asked him, what can we do to help prepare our students? And he said, teach them the importance of extending themselves, and he's there with the church. He said, in developing deep and meaningful relationships with all people at the workforce. It's real easy for them to move to a new community and to get very involved with their wards, stay pretty, tight with their own families, and while that's still important, he said they need to make those relationships with others that are on the workforce. And some of those people are going to have very different values, very different ideas, but they're still good people, or they wouldn't still be at that company, because most companies do not tolerate those that don't have integrity. Enough about that. So, just some wrap-up items. Actually, John's going to help me with this. So, there's been some concern about, I don't have my resume done. What does that mean? I did give the offer to all of you last night. well, we did on Monday, that we would have presidents and leadership there. I had 3 presidents with me last night after the Finn Society opening social, and I had 2 students that said they needed resumes still done. So I'm assuming that all of you now have your resumes reviewed by somebody, because we sure gave you the offer last night and other times. If that is not the case, if you have a really good explanation for why you did not have your resume reviewed last night, as sort of that last opportunity, you'll need to talk with me about that. Because we have been running our TAs ragged to try to meet with you. We've given you emails, addresses of all of the presidencies have said that they're available to you because we care about you. I want you to have the best resume you can have. I mean, I've met with several of you, and you know I get really excited to kind of help you be able to share your story. You each are wonderful individuals. We would not have accepted you into the program if you weren't. But we need to make sure that your story is appropriately shared on that resume so you can get that interview. So, I am a soft touch. I will admit that. I'm not going to fail anybody today, but we need those resumes. And there was a question, well, it's a pass-fail class, so do we really need to do all the assignments, or do we just have to do half to pass the assignment? Trust me, we are only giving you assignments that we feel are important for you so that you can get a great job. That is the only reason why we're asking you to do due diligence. We're going to take 1 minute to talk about what it is to do due diligence, so that when you meet with a company, with an interviewer, that you sound really intelligent and you're really well prepared, and that when you go on these trips, you're going to ask really great questions because you understand what that company's about. And Kim, did you want to take a minute, or have you done that already? Okay. Who feels like they know how to research a company? Who feels like they know how to be prepared to meet with a company? Does that mean none of you feel like you can? You do. Okay, come on. You're scaring me. Okay. And I have a prize for you for coming up and sharing. I actually have a few prizes today for those that will share. Okay. Tell us how you would prepare to meet with a company.
So the most experience I've had with this came from when I went on the Wasatch trip this spring. That was like April this year, when we visited eBay, we visited Huntsman, all these great companies. And something I really enjoyed doing was going to Yahoo Finance. I did this the night before, and I just did the best I could to try to analyze trends in the income statements, balance sheets, just getting a sense of their ratio analysis. And it really helped me develop good questions when I met with the companies. For instance, eBay seemed to have like very high profits during the recession of 2007, 2008 that the other companies didn't seem to have. So I mean, like, there are a lot of things that I feel like I gained from looking at the financial statements.
Great. All right. Here, take this. Okay, this is like, see, go like this, and then it's a splitter, right? Is that a cool thing? I hope. Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else that's ever researched a company? Okay, come on up. What did you do, and were you able to ask some good questions? I'm assuming that some of you have started interviewing, right? Okay. I want one more after my friend Byron.
So I went to research ExxonMobil. I would like to be able to interview with them down in Houston. I realized in the news recently that with the sanctions that the U.S. is putting on Russia, that has really hampered the business deal that Exxon has. It's a $500 billion joint venture that ExxonMobil has with Russia to provide technology to do a lot of the drilling that they've been able to find. Russia would like to tap into some oil reserves, and they can't do that without the technology that Exxon has. So that's certainly something that I'm sure the top executives are talking about at Exxon, and that certainly has some questions that I would like to ask them. Also looking at their sales revenue, they've been in a downward trend, and also their cost of revenue has been increasing. And I would kind of like to know what their concerns are on that and what their plans are to change that trend, because that's something that cannot be sustained over a long period of time.
Anyone else? Come on up.
Something that I do when I research companies is I go onto their website and just look over everything that's there and just kind of get a deep feeling for it, or I just Google facts about this company that are important. And I just look like job descriptions and what they do, just so I can have a better thought process for the interview, so I know what I'm getting into.
Great. Okay, so this is a stylist here also, and you want to do the ads? Woohoo! Okay, thank you. They all raised really good points. Knowing their financials. You know, are they in the upward, downward? Where are they? Current events. How are current events affecting them? The decisions that they're facing. And they may turn that question around to you and go, well, what do you think we should do? And I hope you've thought about that, right? And can you believe it? I mean, I have had people actually say, so what do you do in this job? That's why I took all the time to write a job description, right? So know what the job description is, know what you're getting into. Hopefully you've been talking to other people in that company before you had that interview, so that you can say, you know, this person's explained that, you know, this has been their experience here, that they've had this kind of upward mobility. You know, those kinds of things. You should know everything about it, so that when you interview with them, you can say, this is where I want to be. You are one of my top companies. These are all the things that I really am excited about participating in. Okay? Right? All right, so the assignment. 2 to 3 companies we want to do due diligence on. All right, that was one of the assignments. What's the other one?
So I understand that the due diligence was due today. We're going to extend that deadline
to Friday.
To Friday. A lot of you have been emailing me those things, and of course, like I said earlier, I've been trying to get to all the emails. You have to understand we've been getting about 50 emails a day from you all, so keep that in mind.
Hey, hey, John, you didn't give me the name, which is fine, I don't really want to know it. Someone has to come to his house to get help. Okay, now, I get that you want to get your resume done. 3 people come to his house. Truly, do this over email and set up a time to meet, and we will make ourselves available to you. We will extend the deadline for you, whatever it takes, but he needs his weekends too.
I'm trying.
All right, elevator pitch. Does everyone know what an elevator pitch is? Who knows what an elevator pitch is? Good, come on down, give it to us. Okay, we're going to do one elevator pitch, one more prize, and then we're going to let you out of here. Come on down. You're going to do your part. Are you ready? There we are. Okay, you're going to need to do this to 2 to 3 people. You're going to want to get real good at this, because after the career fair, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be meeting someone and you're going to be saying, this is who I am.
I'm Dustin Wesley. I am a senior studying finance at BYU. I enjoy entrepreneurship, but I also enjoy sort of the analytical side that finance provides, and also trying to come up with innovative and different ways to approach each problem. I also studied entrepreneurship last year and I enjoyed that. I felt that finance would open more doors and would allow me to understand a business in a broader sense. And so, studying finance is looking for great opportunities.
Great. Okay. I'll give you praise. We have to work with you. highlight a couple of things that you've done that are impressive for them, maybe a company you've worked for, those kinds of things, and why you want to work for them. And that's where the research comes in. And just say, I am really excited about this initiative that is important to your company, it's important to me, I want to be part of that, articulate what that is. Let them know that you're seriously concerned about that, so that should always be part of that conversation. So anyway, do you have anything else to add, Kim? Okay, Michael, we're good? Thank you so much.